Mr. Harper.
Thank you very much. In order to familiarize myself more with the situation, what are situations like this that have happened in the past, and what was the remedy at that time? Or is this something truly different from what's happened in the past?
I'm sure that we've faced this kind of situation in the past here in California, unfortunately, but I'm not sure what that history is, so I would look to either Debbie or Laura to help us with what the history has been in the past.
Sure. Witness, go ahead.
Sure. I don't know that there's ever been something exactly like this. Certainly schools close, not infrequently in California or throughout the rest of the country. I think what's very different about this situation is the scope of the students affected, right? We're talking 12,000 or so California, 16,000 Californians, somewhere in that range. So we're talking about a lot of students. We're also talking about a very troubled company in the case of Corinthian, one that has faced numerous investigations and oversight actions from a number of different entities at the federal level and at the state level. I think that a lot of state and federal provisions are getting additional scrutiny right now. Part of what's happened is that there were a lot of growth within the for-profit college sector in the 2000s in particular, changing regulations that kind of facilitated the situation that we're in right now. I think things are moving in the right direction, but so hopefully we won't see something again at this scale, but I think we need to be prepared if we do. And certainly students shouldn't need to be in part of a school that's 12 or 16,000 students that are closing or being affected to actually get access to their relief.
If I could too add that the scope of this bill and the intent of this bill is not to address all the shortcomings that are part of the situation that got us here. That is not the scope of this bill. That the scope of this bill is to aid, help the students now. The 13,000 students who are affected with the closure of this school. And with that, I would thank the two students that came. I would thank Tiffany and Darcy who came, who told their story, I think in a very strong way. As educators, as members of this committee, I think we need to look at education as a ladder to upward mobility, because that's what we think of education as being in this country and in California. But unfortunately for these students, this ladder had a lot of broken rungs, and what this bill tries to do is to address those wrongs and to help those students in a way, in a very tangible way, and I think that's what the bill tries to do. And I think later we may be able to look more deeply into what were the causes and what we can do to help from this happening again. But now this bill just wants to address the students here and now.
Two of the concerns I have regarding the bill. Of course, this first one is in regards to, I agree with the problem, and I recognize the need to have a solution very quickly. My concern, though, is that in our rush to be able to help, that we may establish what may be a precedent in terms of operation or response. I'm unfamiliar, and perhaps you could help me illuminate. Do we have other institutions that may be at similar risk? Are there very few students in that situation that are remaining after the approximately 16,000, or is there a very significant population that we may be setting a precedent for?
So as recently as Thursday, we had a hearing, a sunset hearing, along with BP, help me.
BPPE?
Yeah. Bureau
of
Private Professional Post-Secondary For-Profit Colleges. We had a review, sunset review, where they were responding to Assemblywoman Bonilla's letter to them. And that was one of the questions that we posed at that hearing, on Thursday, and I don't think that they answered completely in the negative, that we have no danger of this happening again, but they thought that the number were smaller, and that this case was somewhat unique given all the negative things that were happening to them or that they were engaged in.
Yeah, the second concern I have is the legal aid component, as well as the funding source for the legal aid. It was presented whether this is appropriate for general fund, whether appropriate for this fund, and in general. Of course, my concern is that every time there's a tragedy or a difficulty, often the first folks to line up are attorneys. And so my concern is, is this a windfall, and is this an appropriate windfall in this situation?
So I think we heard the concern from industry about the appropriateness of giving legal aid to those students who didn't pay into it. But I think that it was no fault of the students. It was certainly no fault of the students. It was more oversight on the state itself for not collecting fees from them. And I think if we were moving forward a few months from now, we might not be in that same situation. But here's where we are now. And so I don't think that it should fall on the students themselves. I disagree with those people who spoke on behalf of the industry. I don't think that the students should suffer, that those students should suffer, that we should cover them, make them whole as the students that did pay into the program.
Mr. Williams?
I want to speak in plain agreement with the chair on this matter of there's really no perfect way for the funds to come from anywhere. I mean, I think it's true to say that it's not fair to the students who did pay into it, but it wouldn't be fair to use general funds either, because this institution is no longer Cal Grant eligible. Any general funds we use might reduce the amount of Cal Grant monies that we can give out. So one way or another, there's not a fair place to draw the funds from. So you're doing a good job of trying to make a good situation out of a mess, or a better situation out of a mess. There's just no perfect way to do it. This is, I think, the best that could have been done.
Ms. Weber?
Yes, I want to support this effort as well. I know it's kind of a difficult situation, and we've seen the tremendous increase in the number of for-profit schools in the California, and we've had lots of hearings and discussions about them, and we've tried to structure various things to respond to issues that come forward with regards to whether or not students are completing their degrees, whether or not they're getting jobs when they finish, what kind of advertising is there. We've tried to address it by denying financial assistance to those institutions that don't have good graduation rates and good placement rates. And so this is stuff we're going to have to continue to work on because we're finding, and unfortunately in most of these institutions, they are the institutions that somehow have the least successful track record, or not the best track record, often prey on the people who can least afford to attend. And so you have lots of folks who are looking for a quick and fast way to get a degree and improve their lives. And logically, we think they ought to go to community college, because you can't get a better experience than at a community college. But it's going to take you longer than sometimes the things that are promised at many of the institutions. And so I think we all in our communities try to give messages out to young people and to people in our community that the best deal in town is the community college, period, in terms of financing, in terms of the kind of curriculum you're going to get, the kind of career you're going to have. But nonetheless, we know life throws you many curves, and so as a result, people look for those opportunities that fit into their lifestyle. And so my community has lots of them. Everybody else's community has lots of them. We deal with a lot of young people who end up, unfortunately, in situations that are very expensive, even when the schools don't close down. They end up with huge debts and maybe not the same kind of opportunity that they would have gotten with spending a little bit more time in a community college in terms of where it transitions for them in their life. And so it's one of these unfortunate situations. It's not appropriate, as I want to point out, to put into the general fund. But I think we have to do a better job in terms of making sure that those who attend these institutions actually play into this special fund that was created to deal with the uncertainties of these kinds of activities. But we also have to do a very good job of explaining to young people, maybe when they get these loans and grants, have someone other than the institutions explain to them the nature of the institution. What the track record is of that institution, what kind of opportunities they'll have, so that make sure that they choose, when they're choosing a for-profit institution, they're choosing some with good track records, and all of us have some of those in our districts, and that they know that there's a likelihood of that institution remaining open, being fair and honest with the kinds of loans that they get, and not having young people get loans that they don't even know they have. I mean, that kind of thing. So it's unfortunate this has come up. I don't know. I thought about it. I don't have a solution to it other than I know that there are a lot of folks who are caught in the middle. I think as a higher ed committee, we have to begin to look at this, and we've looked at it over the last couple of years. But we have to look at the proliferation of these institutions, the implications it has for those in our communities, and make sure that when people make those choices, they make informed choices, knowing what the options are, and then put some safeguards in it so they're kind of protected as they go along with regards to who can and cannot sign for their loans and all those kinds of things. That's really unfortunate that happens. But unfortunately, it happens to those who can least afford to have this in their lives, to have a debt of $30,000, $40,000 and you're unemployed. It's the worst thing in the world. We've seen a lot of school debt at our universities of California and CSUs, but those folks have an opportunity to get a job and to really grow and develop from that degree. So that investment might be good. But if you're facing $35,000, $40,000 debt, and you didn't finish the program is shut down, and it goes on, and your likelihood of getting another grant, becomes difficult. So I think that's something we have to respond to. I'm somewhat supportive of legal aid, because legal aid is probably, once again, one of our best deals in town in terms of finding folks who are committed to working in communities. I think you put some limitations on the amount of money they can get per student, which is good, and it's almost as if they're doing this work almost as pro bono when you look at the amount that we're willing to pay them, and it's not just an open blank check of any amount, but it really targets this and will help those students to have the kind of assistance to navigate a very complex system and deal with these other attorneys and these other folks that are going to be coming at them to deny them their rights. So I think it's reasonable for us to look at something like legal aid that's a nonprofit to begin to talk about helping the students that are there.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Additional committee comments, questions? Mr. Chavez, who please can join us. There is a seat at the head of the table for you.
Well, everybody says I used to look like Medina before I shaved my mustache, so it's appropriate to be here.
We still have the T-shirts.
And for anybody who's watching, I've been hearing the whole hearing. I just didn't have a seat, so I get to talk. I see this at a couple of points I just want to highlight. First of all, Corinthian was not part of this BPPE. Is that correct? Right?
I think it was
Yes?
Heald was not part.
Heald was not. Heald was not, but Corinthian was? Okay.
Heald was one of their 3 colleges under Corinthian.
And the other point I'd like to bring up is I agree with Ms. Weber as far as people making life choices, but I've been watching this now for 3 years, sitting on this committee and Budget Sub 2, and what I think is clear to me is that because of the economics and way people's positions are, they know that in order to get forward, they have to get an education or new skill levels. And we know that we had a brief in Sub 2 the other day where the CSUs and the UCs were presenting us a chart that showed it was 6 to 10 years to actually get a degree. Think about that. We have a chart that shows it's 6 to 10 years to get a degree in our CSUs and UCs. There's a problem there, that it takes that long to get out. Some of us older ones, remember, we could get out in 4 years through college. Miss Weber's laughing. She's with me at that age group. So we're able to do that. So there's a problem we have there. So people are being forced to go into these other things. Back when I was the Secretary of Veteran Affairs, I started tracking where veterans were losing their GI Bill for these for-profits and not getting them any degrees. And I actually met with a number of these institutions and told them that if they did not start having veteran programs, I was going to run around the state of California and tell every veteran organization in the state that they were ripping off veterans. They got very upset over that. But that's the power that the executive branch has, is to call these people on task. I think that's what we need to do as a body here. There's a lot of good prophets out there, and we should not paint them with the same brush as the bad ones. But as I've often told the California Charter School Association, you need to police out the bad charter schools if you want to keep your image up. And I think the prophets need to police out the bad prophets if they want to keep their institution up. And I think that we as a body here ought to hold those people, the numbers are out there, accountable for not taking care of their students. We can do that in this body here. So that would be my recommendation. I'm going to be supporting this because I don't want to hold anybody at cost. I don't have the biggest problem with taking the general fund as others do, but because I think we had to take care of these people because it's a bad situation. But I think institutionally we had to take on the position of taking on these for-profits that are taking advantage of our veterans. They're taking advantage of people at the lower economics. They're taking advantage of people who maybe didn't do so well in high school and now can't get into college. And though now they're trying to rebuild their lives, they're taking advantage of them. And that's just unconscionable, and we had to take them to task. My recommendation.
Thank you. I have a couple of points as well, and I'm a co-author of the bill and pleased to be with you, Chairman Medina. It's been a pleasure working with your staff in the short time frame that we have been doing this to see if we can help these students, which I think we all agree is what we need to be doing. To Mr. Harper's excellent point, though, is this could be setting precedent for potential future issues if there are other closures. So we want to make sure, and I know we're working very hard together to do it right this time. To the point about HEALD not paying into the fund, because I'm on the side of the Bureau funds being used instead of general funds, which is currently what this bill does. As I understand it, that fund is capped. So there are students right now in institutions that are not closed that are not paying into it because they've reached their cap, which is one of the reasons why we may need to increase that cap. If I remember correctly, that's correct, isn't it?
The bill does.
Yeah, exactly. And so being mindful of the fact that HEALD was actually in a process, as I understand it, where probably sometime early next year they would have started paying into the fund.
Correct.
Assuming the cap had not already been reached. So we need to be mindful of that as well in terms of how the cap works and whether or not HEALD could even have paid into it. To the point about lawyers, I don't really like to see state money get to pay lawyers either, and I'm a lawyer. So I feel strongly that we need to be really careful about this $1.3 million, and we've talked about this and had good conversations about it. I think we've reached the right balance in the bill. You know, in my practice, I've actually represented pro bono individuals who were preyed upon by poor legal aid societies that took advantage of them when they were given almost a blank check in the mortgage bailouts, basically. So I think it's an excellent point that Mr. Harper and some of the others have raised. And I think the solution may be, and we've chatted a bit about this, first of all, having it be an application. So it's not an automatic check that's getting cut to legal aid societies, being specific about what meets the criteria for legal aid that could receive that in the first place. And third, having the funds available almost as a reimbursement to legal aid after they have actually helped a student, either reached an agreement that they're going to be representing that student so that it's not a hypothetical service that will be provided. That's something I think we can have a commitment on together if you would agree on those positions. I think we have agreed to them. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with those.
You know, I think, and I thank you for your recommendation, and I think that moving forward we might find a hybrid where we can blend the two. Maybe a certain amount of money being part of the grant, and then the second part of the money could be on after the fact, as we discussed, after the work has been done.
And it may be possible that the grant is what they apply for after the work has been done. So we can. I will look forward to those good conversations.
Yes.
Not because I think lawyers in particular need to have these checks and balances, but that funds going to legal aid and making sure that we're very specific about what qualifies as a legal aid that can be a recipient of the funds to begin with. And I understand that the $100 per student is the amount that is where the 1.3 is coming from.
Exactly.
So there's been some discipline. Or it wasn't like the figure was just pulled out of the air. Can you let me know what happens to any unused funds of the 1.3 million? Will they be returned to remain in the Bureau's fund?
Yes.
Okay. That's an important one as well. Sometimes it doesn't always happen. There's unused funds. Well, with that, I am pleased to support the bill. Again, it has been a pleasure working with your office and you personally on making sure we're doing what's right. We want to get this right. And unless I see further questions, would you like to close?
Yes. Thank you. I want to thank Tiffany and Darcy for coming here, for being the face of the 13,000 students that we read about in the newspaper and maybe see on television. But they have presented, their real life situations to us. And because of that, I think it is very important that we act. I want to thank the industry representatives for their comments. My office reached out to the industry early, and we were able to incorporate some of their recommendations into the most recent amendments. We took the recommendation from the West Coast College to limit the Cal Grant restoration to Corinthian students, and we accepted the recommendations from CAPS to apply the community college provision only to Corinthian students. Moving forward, I'm also interested in the recommendation from the American Career College to place 2 financial aid experts on the closed school task force. So in closing, as I said, this bill is about helping students harmed by the Corinthian closure. There are a number of outstanding questions, as Mr. Harper brought out, about how and why the Corinthian closure happened. And we do need to have a conversation about how we can prevent this from happening again. But this bill is about making these students who were affected financially and educationally whole. I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. This is a due pass to the floor. If you can call the roll.
Medina?
Aye.
Medina, aye. Baker?
Aye.
Baker, aye. Bloom? Chavez? Aye. Chavez, aye. Harper? Harper not voting. Irwin? Irwin, aye. Jones Sawyer? Jones Sawyer, aye. Levine? Levine, aye. Linder? Linder, aye. Lowe? Lowe, aye. Santiago? Santiago, aye. Weber? Weber, aye. Williams? Williams, aye.
11-0, Mr. Chairman. And we're holding it open for any missing members. He's not going to name it. All right, with that, I do believe we are adjourned. Thank you.